Well, you got the Bluetooth headset too. You really,
Oh, I should take that off for the interview.
That's very modern.
I'm a very modern geek, yeah. I'm a geek.
Are you a technology guy?
Yeah.
What other gadgets are you? Do you need an iPad now?
Yeah, I got iPad, iPod, everything.
All of it?
Yeah, iPhone.
Do you like the way... Well, let's start the interview. Peter Noone. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Let's talk about that in technology and how music has changed. I mean, you started pressing vinyl, and you know, and now there's no physical copy anymore of music. It's all just... It's nothing, really.
I think it's good that there's nothing, really, because if you remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but if you remember when you would go to a record store, there was usually some guy there with a tattoo that you wanted to mess with and ask for, like, have you got the new Roger Whittaker whistling album? So that he'd be really angry. He would only be really interested in songs by bands that no one had ever heard of.
Right.
You know, and if you were in Canada and you went and asked for, like, Guess Who? Mm-hmm. Yeah, over there on the G. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they're all gone. You know, they sort of dug their own grave, didn't they? It was not a good experience going to a record store. When I was a kid, it was a great experience going to a record store. You would hear music in there. They wouldn't be trying to sell books and DVDs. It was records, and the people who were there liked music. They enjoyed music. They weren't necessarily musicians. They were kind of music lovers. Mm-hmm. So they were happy when Perry Como came along, and you got kids in the store to buy a Perry Como record for their grandparents, and they would hear At the Hop. So that's all gone. Now what happened is most of the shopping thing is gone for kids, hasn't it? You can buy most anything that you want online.
Pretty much.
You know, if you want a book for college, you can go to Amazon.com and you can get a used one, and it's cheaper than if you have to deal with that horrible woman who's the librarian at the college, you know, who really doesn't like kids. Mm-hmm. And she went in a business where you deal with kids, teachers, right? So the teachers, librarians are all gone. You know, now it's people can just have their own experience. So I'm a big fan of being able to, like at my website, peternoone.com, I interact with people who like me, who have similar interests.
You go on and chat with them?
Yeah, but think about it, they have a similar interest and they connect to each other by me. Mm-hmm. You know, they like 60s music, they like English music, whatever. Mm-hmm. So they've all got a common thread, and they're called lunatics, and they interact with each other. Mm. So it's very useful. You know, there was never that opportunity. For example, in 1964, if I was playing here and somebody sent me a letter, I would get it in about a year. And if it was a request for a song, it would be a year later. You know, it would be here. We wouldn't have time to read the mail here because we would arrive and do the show.
Well,
and
you must
leave.
be getting thousands of letters too back then.
Yeah, you know, but it's still, you wouldn't get them until it was too late to react to them, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm 18, blonde, da-da-da. You would miss it completely.
It would be a shame.
Yeah.
You mentioned the record stores. Take me back to those record stores. What do you remember that first record you listened to and said, this is what I want to do as a career?
The one that made me want to do it as a career, I don't know. But I remember, you know, I came from this family of musicians. You know, my grandfather played the organ in church and the piano at home. And my grandmother ran the church choir. And my Auntie Mary played Fats Waller music full time in another room. So I was always exposed to music, but their music was barcarolle and, you know, sort of classical, no popular music from the period, which is really odd. My auntie had this... I lived with my grandparents. I didn't live with my parents. I was exposed to all this roundabout music. And the first record I think that I bought... You know, I remember going in a record store and asking for the new Perry Como record, and they gave me the Frank Sinatra record because they said it was the same type of stuff. And my dad made me take it back because he said Perry Como is not like Frank Sinatra. It was all uppity. And I remember that was the first record I actually purchased, and then I went back to the same record store because it was near me, also run by an older lady who didn't really want to sell me a record, but I bought Danny and the Juniors at the Hop. And that led me into... I didn't like any of the English singers. I remember they were all copying American singers. You know, like Craig Douglas did Sam Cooke. And
well, you guys did a Sam Cooke song too, eventually.
Yeah. But we did it when he was dead. We did it not in competition with him. We did it as a tribute to him. But I grew to like Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and Roy Orbison and all those American, probably country songs, the Everly Brothers, Johnny Cash, everything that was a little bit country. And then bit by bit that led me into the Sam Cookes and the Little Richards and the, you know, and I had a full immersion in music. And I was a bit of a DJ, you know, I had a load of records because my parents were pretty wealthy. I had a load of records and I turned that into, I had a DJ gig in Manchester, which was kind of stupid really.
You must have been like, what, 12 at the time?
13.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just played records. I didn't have a microphone or anything. It wasn't, and now turn the hi-fi light. It wasn't one of those. I just played records, you know, and I had a load of records and people danced on a dance floor and it was like a restaurant. So, and by that, I thought it would be good to have records that nobody else had, to be a unique disc jockey, yeah. And that's when I started building my repertoire. And then one day I went to a school of music in the evening, and one day I was going to this club to see a band. And, you know, I was about 13, so you go to see the band, but you're really going to maybe dance with girls. And in those days, all the girls sat on one side and all the boys sat on one side. And I was sitting on the side with the boys, all of whom I went to school with. And the singer from the band didn't show up. And they said, well, Peter Noone knows all the songs that we do because he's got a DJ gig and he knows the words and everything. So this guy, Alan Wrigley, comes and said, would you sing with the band tonight? Because Malcolm, got to be called Malcolm, don't they? These guys have got to be called Malcolm. Malcolm isn't showing up. And I said, yeah, what are you doing? And they gave me a list of songs. It was I'm a Hog for You, Baby, you know, Arthur Alexander, and I'll Never Dance Again, which is Bobby Rydell. And they were all songs that I knew. So I said, yeah, I'll have a go. And I got up and I sang, and Malcolm never showed up again. They said, don't bother showing up, Malcolm, we've got a new singer. So I became,
there you go.
They were called the Heartbeats, and I became Pete Novak. They chose the name Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. My mum took me out and looked for clothes, and we eventually called this local English singer called Deke Rivers, who had an advert in the Manchester Evening News, like stage singers, rock singers' clothes for sale. And he came over to our house, and he had this blue silver lame suit and a red sort of three-piece suit. And my mum bought them, and we fixed them up, and they were like 15 sizes too big for me.
You're still touring, like 50 years later.
Is it 50? Yeah, it is 50 years.
Something like that.
Shit, did you just say 50 years? Yeah.
Sorry.
You know, the first time I came to Calgary was 46 years ago, and I remember there was nothing here.
Really?
I think there were probably cows grazing out here.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's been a boom in the last 20 years. Well, I'm sure you've come back many times.
Can you imagine, 46 years ago, what was here? It's hardly anything. It's very impressive,
How come you guys came here 46 years ago? You were a fairly large band. Calgary wasn't a very big market.
Calgary Stampede.
Right.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
Is it still a big deal?
Yeah, it's still a huge deal.
Okay. So we came to do the Calgary. So we were all excited. The Calgary Stampede is like, for us English people, cowboys in England.
Oh yeah, way different.
Like, whoa, yeah. That's what we were looking for, some of that.
Do you still love it as much? Playing?
Yeah, you know, it's still kind of an adventure. It's a Panglossian adventure. You know, I'm always, like I get on the plane and it's always an adventure. I like going to the airport and getting on the plane and where are we going, and most places I've been, but it's still got that adventure spirit, you know.
Nice. What are the set lists looking like?
Well, we don't have a set list, so to speak. We've got a list of songs, but they're not like in order. And we always
assuming all the old hits, some
yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah, we do. I'm into something good. Wonderful World, Listen People, Silhouettes, Can't You Hear My Heartbeat, Mrs. Brown, Henry VIII, There's a Kind of Hush, just a little bit better.
So many hits.
Yeah. We do all the hits in every show, but then we don't know which order they go in. We found it's more fun for me to just shout them out.
Yeah. And the band likes that too, keep them on their toes?
Yeah. Because it looks like enthusiasm. Like what we do next looks like enthusiasm.
Are you throwing any contemporary songs in? Do you ever have that wish kind of thing?
Yeah, we do a sort of semi-contemporary songs. We think our songs are contemporary because quite often there are people in the audience who've never heard them before, or they've heard them but they don't place them with us. You know, they go, oh, after the show people come and say, I must to avoid, I always wondered who did that, you know. So we think of ourselves as a contemporary oldies band. You know, and we're lucky because if you see the kind of oldies bands that are out there, they're mostly crap, you know that. I mean, they're crap. And we think that we kind of still have something to offer. You know, we get more fans at a show, not less. You know how many bands you go and see and afterwards you go, oh boy, what a shame, I remember them when they were, you know what I mean? We try to keep it on the up and up. And that's been working for us. There's a curve going like that. You know, we do sell more records, mostly online actually, because people are now getting more adept.
Right.
You know, it used to be difficult to download a file.
Right.
But now it's very, very simple. Click here.
You do it on your phone nowadays.
Yeah, right, exactly. So people are more apt to do that. And you know, and also at concerts, like tonight, you see we sell a load of CDs at concerts because Lots of people had a Herman's Hermits record in another century,
Right.
in another format that they don't have any way to play it. So they go, well, I used to have these. I'm going to go and buy it. And they buy a CD. And the CDs are pretty obvious. You know, they got the greatest hits.
Yeah.
You know, and in Canada, it's like a double CD. Mm-hmm. And it's good value. You know, you can't buy it in a store.
There you go.
If you buy one in a gas station, like people do in Canada, they're usually fake.
Usually fake? What do you mean by that?
They're not
like
the real band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're usually sort of remakes by, you know, whoever.
Speaking of which, did you not kind of make a fake then, in a way, of one of the songs for the Naked Gun movie?
Yes, I had to. You know, the people who own the original asked for $1 million, so the people had already used it in the movie. So they said to me, so I said, "Oh, that's really a shame," because they were fans of Herman Hermits, the two producers. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, why don't we just cut it again?" And they looked at me. You know, I think I was like 45. Well, will you be able to sing it?
You're
like
not 16
that?
anymore.
Yeah, well, let's have a go. And we did it, and it was very good. And then we were afraid that the people who owned it would think we were using the real one. So we had to put that sort of dodgy Moog synthesizer guitar solo. So that it wouldn't sound like the real one, because it was really close. It was a great recording, I thought.
I don't know if you want to talk about it. I've talked to a lot of people about it, like Bo Diddley and stuff. And you mentioned the Dodgy people, Alan Klein being the main one, basically. Did you make out all right at the end of the day?
Yeah, you know, I'm one of the odd ones out. I made out really well because I think if somebody, say Alan Klein, who was a scumbag and a thief, I mean, he's famous for being...
Oh, of course.
Stole money from Biafra.
From everyone.
Concert for Biafra. You don't want that money.
No.
That is bad karma. So...
Well, he'll get his.
But I think he got his already.
Okay.
There was a lot of people dancing at his graveyard.
Okay.
That's an Irish joke. But in my case, you know, and I did know Bo and all those people, my argument always was, but if somebody had come to me when I was 15 and offered me this career, this kind of career that would go on for 46 years, 50, whatever it is, and you would do all this stuff and get to travel the world and stay in hotels and meet people, and I said I would have probably asked, can I put some of the payments on my credit card and stretch it out a little bit? You know, most people would pay for my career. Mm-hmm. So I'm a grateful sort of survivor of that whole thing, because if I wasted any time thinking about that, I would be really in bad shape. I'd be one of those, and I'm not one of those. You know, I've got to get on with it. I think that the next record I make, which I'm not even planning to make one, should be the one that I really give a shit about, you know.
Really? So you mentioned a record, though, so it's got to be somewhere in your mind.
There's a chance that, you know, my audience would buy... What I did on my website was I did a little test, because you don't know... So I said, if I recorded this song, I'll Never Dance Again, which we do in the live show, but it's not really available recorded. Because when Herman's Hermits recorded it, we forgot one of the verses, and it's like an important verse.
Okay.
So the story doesn't work without that verse.
Right.
So we do it on stage, look, here's the song with the real... So you can work out the story. And it's very popular. And then people wanted to... So I said on my website, I did a test, I have a little poll thing. And I said, if I re-recorded I'll Never Dance Again, this song, and I made it available only as a download, 2 questions. Do you know how to download songs? Mm-hmm. And 2, would you? And 80% of the people answered in the thousands that they do know how to download a song. But 3 years ago, it would have been only 2%. Yeah. Only 3. It's quickly moved, you know. So now me and the band are putting together a new version of I'll Never Dance Again. It's really just a question of finding time between concerts to go in the studio and sing it really well.
You wouldn't do it? You wouldn't just take a live take?
They don't want a live take.
They want a studio.
Yeah. The studio has... Yeah. You know, there's a little bit more thought to it. You know, you know what's happened, there's hundreds of versions of it live on YouTube. If you want that version, just go to YouTube. The brilliant thing about YouTube is that I go and harass the band. Look, what were you doing? What's this? It's the wrong note. You're singing wrong. What are you jumping around here for? Shouldn't you be concentrating on the guitar solo, not kicking? And, you know, it's just fun stuff, you know.
It was fun for me to go on YouTube today and watch some old videos of you guys playing. And I didn't know you did For Your Love and Bus Stop and all these songs that other bands...
Well, we did them first. You know, what happened with those, especially those 2 songs, was Graham Goulman wrote them for us. But they just didn't work out in the studio. If you listen to them, they didn't work. We play them better than anybody now, but at the time...
When you say we, I mean, rock and roll folklore is you had your band. I mean, Lek's a great guitar player,
right?
But Page played on most songs. Jean Paul Jones played on most.
Well, no, we do the songs that didn't work out. Strangely enough, are probably the original guys, Carl Keith and Barry and Lek, like Bus Stop and For Your Love. And what we would do we would try things out, and if they didn't work, they'd become album tracks. And sometimes there was an opportunity like Silhouettes, where we knew that we couldn't play that really well, so that then we would use session men. By the time we got them on stage, we played them better than the session men. Do you understand the difference?
Of course.
But it was a question of speed. You know, in those days we would say like, Wonderful World Jimmy Page plays on. So you'd say, we got to get this record out on Friday. This is Monday. You know, Sam Cooke has been killed in Los Angeles, and we want to get a record out. We did Wonderful World, and the Animals did Bring It On Home to Me. We didn't play on the record because it was quick and good thinking to get the best players in the world and get it done quickly.
It doesn't happen anymore, though. Like, it boggles my mind that you can get things at the click of a button now, but records take months to come out, whereas back in the day, you recorded Tuesday, it's out.
Yeah, but that's what happened to the record business. But I think what happened is, in this odd way, because we didn't have a plan, it made it very fresh. And a lot of people didn't have a plan. You know, we were kind of independent at the time. The Stones were independent, the Beatles were independent, and Herman's Hermits were independent. You know, we didn't have to ask the label what they think. Because I think about it in retrospect, if we'd have offered Henry VIII to the label, they would say, I think you should go home and write a second verse and put some strings in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And have a real ending. So labels eventually got involved in the final production. And it should always be the music. It's like, if you were a painter and you finished a painting and then somebody came and like added a few touches to it and then put it in the gallery, it would be hard, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? So that's what's happened to the record business. There's too many people get to what you think is the end product and then mess with it or promote it in a way that you don't want. It's happened to me, you know, that something that you have an idea and then they promote it in a completely different way. You know, it's lost all the fresh thing. The freshest thing now is like American Idol and stuff like that, where people have an opportunity to fail in front of a lot of people. You had a chance to take part in that too. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed hanging out with people. The people who are on American Idol have more experience than they play. You know, they were usually in a band or they played a lot of nightclubs and things like that. So they're all much more able to. It's not their first time out there, if you know what I mean. You can tell the difference. So that's what I think. I mean, American Idol is probably, in England, it killed the record business forever, because if whoever wins it doesn't even sell any records. It ultimately goes there, you know, that it's just, okay, they won American Idol. That doesn't mean I have to buy their record. Yeah. They were the best out of the 26 people, but, you know, what happens is people are singing in a karaoke bar, and people say, you should be on American Idol or Canadian Idol, whatever, you should be on American Idol, and they show up for the audition. Well, that isn't part of the process of being a musician. Part of the process is to go and fail, not in a karaoke bar, but with your own musicians, and try a couple of songs on your own without a pre-prepared Kyoto track. I know they're starting stuff over here, but I got a couple of names for you that I just wouldn't mind getting some quick thoughts on the people you've met over the years, kind of thing. And let's start with Derek Leckenby. I know they're starting stuff over here, but I got a couple of names for you that I just wouldn't mind getting some quick thoughts on the people you've met over the years, kind of thing. And let's start with Derek Leckenby. Derek Leckenby was a really underestimated guitar player. He was a really good guitar player. We got him out of another band. We had a guitar player and he wasn't making it. It was actually Keith Hopwood who was playing lead guitar, and it wasn't the kind of guitar. Keith is an absolute genius guitar player, by the way, and he's still around and still a great guitar player. But Lek could learn a song and nail it. You know, one of those guys. He didn't really have good. He couldn't sing a song, but he could pick it up and play it and remember it. Yeah, but he couldn't even sing background vocals. He didn't have a voice. You know, he couldn't sing in tune, but he could learn songs. And you know, he was just a great guy. You know, his dad was a policeman. You know, he's one of those guys. He listened to me, which is quite astonishing. You know, like you could only be in my band if you quit your job, because our competition was like full-time gig. So, and they were all stupid enough to listen to me.
His dad must have loved you guys getting thrown at Holiday Inns and all this stuff.
We didn't really do a lot of that. He didn't. Lek didn't. They always blamed it on me. That was okay. I was the person who got thrown out.
Well, you're the front man. You take the blame. That's kind of the role.
But it's like a Robert Plant says. The front man usually was in bed because he was taking care of his voice.
Yeah. It's true. Well, the next one was actually Jimmy Page on the topic of Robert Plant.
Yeah, I see Jimmy Page a lot. Because we meet at funerals. It's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? Mickie Most, who was our producer, was also good friends with Jimmy, and his funeral, and Jimmy's great because.
It's appropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So but Jimmy at Mickey's funeral was great. He knew he was going to die for a long time. He had from asbestosis, whatever it's called. So he planned the funeral, and it was really good because he had like Bebop Lulu as he came in the room. He didn't want any of those like sad songs.
Right.
And then he had I'm Into Something Good.
Yeah.
And when they were fire, da 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 da, he had this like routine, and then they played I'm Into Something Good and Whole Lot of Love by Led Zeppelin, but the CCS version, and then There's a Kind of Hush, and Jimmy Page says it's not fair. He chose two of your songs. Jimmy's a good guy, and John Paul Jones, was the guy who really created all those like No Milk Todays and Dandy and There's a Kind of Hush.
I didn't
John
know
Paul
that.
Jones. He did all the arrangements for a long time there. I tried to get him in the band, but the other Hermits didn't want him in the band. Because I thought he could just play the B3 and just be there.
Just add something to it.
He did one German tour and then they got rid of him. They didn't want to pay him.
He did all right on his own, though. He's doing all right still
they
today,
said that
actually.
when they got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They said, well, we had to wait for him until he'd finished with his Hermits. That was that German tour.
Have you heard, speaking of John Paul Jones, have you heard the Them Crooked Vultures record? What do you think?
The watch record?
He's got a new band now with Davy.
No, I haven't heard it. I'm going to get it today.
There you go.
I'll go and get it right now.
Cool. It's harder, so I wonder what your thoughts will be.
I'm a big fan of his. Every time I see him, I see him again, like Jimmy Page at funerals. I go, there he is, my favorite musician.
Huh.
I think his wife likes that. He's used to hearing it. But I think his wife, he's my favorite musician. The Led Zeppelin stuff is like, okay. It really was Bonham and John Paul Jones who set, like in all those big bands, there's always two guys like Fleetwood Mac and Stones. There's always a drummer and a bass player who sort of give those other people opportunities to shine.
Right. I was going to say the next one's Keith Richards, but you know Charlie and Bill better, don't you?
I know Charlie. I don't know Bill very well. I know Charlie.
Okay.
I knew Brian. There was a strange thing in the Stones. If you were friends with Brian, you couldn't be friends with Mick.
Huh.
It was like you had to make a choice. I chose
It's
Brian.
like a
I thought it was
divorce
a far more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they did get divorced, as you know. They kicked him out. But I like Keith. I think Keith is a real gentle spirit. You know what I mean? I know you see this, but I know that's 80% acting and 20% reality.
On the topic of acting, I was reading a quote. Some journalist said this about you, that you were an actor playing a really good pop singer at the beginning. Did you ever feel that way?
No, I think I was. At the beginning, I didn't have to act. I think I was. Herman is Peter, Noone is Herman. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I think now I have to act. Now I use any method I can to become the character that I take on stage. I often say to people, be careful, don't take yourself on stage, because that's not who people want to see. Like Davy Jones, they want to see the real Davy Jones. They want to see the guy from the Monkees. So what I do is, I'm friends with a few really famous actors, successful actors, and they are famous. And I have to stay in the moment on stage, like in a play. I have to be the person. And it's kind of good for me because I get to be 17, which is an adrenaline. Really, I say to my doctor, I'm really sore. And he goes, what did you do? I said, well, I jumped off a drum riser. How high is a drum riser? It was like that high. He said, why'd you do that? I said, because I can when I'm on stage. The thing that surprised me was I could jump up. I have trouble standing up, but suddenly on stage. And it's that thing that, I become, when I sing Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, I go back to the person who originally sang it. I can actually be in the studio singing it, which is, Stanislavski.
Yeah.
So I do that, and it makes the songs make sense to me. And I think the audience, I always thought the audience knew, because I was in the audience and I always knew. I knew, like I go and see ZZ Top, and they know that I know. And that makes them different.
Right.
A lot of people don't know if you know or not. But ZZ Top know that you know, and when he does his finger on, he knows that we know.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, that's cool, and he does it for us.
Oh, of course.
Do you know what I mean?
It's all part of the show.
Whether he knows we're there or not, he knows that there are people in the audience who would know. So, and I take a lot of that into it. I mean, I'm one of those stupid people who constantly worries about it. I wonder what they're thinking, because you don't want to trick an audience or disappoint an audience.
Of course.
You know? Tried never to say fuck on stage, you know what I mean?
Well, thanks for saying the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Back to the list, Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney is probably the best of the lot. I remember when I was a kid, I was already in a band, but I was a kid. See, it's hard for people to understand this, but Herman's Hermits finished recording about the same age that the Beatles started recording. We were that age when we finished recording. We were all 22 when we said that's it.
Yeah.
And they were all 22 when they got in the studio. So there's a whole different thing. But he understood that, and he was very gentlemanly. He and I were the only two people that Sir Joseph Lockwood, who ran EMI, ever invited for lunch from all those bands, because we were kind of gentlemen. You know, we were sort of overeducated for the position, and he was unique because I saw him in Boots the Chemist. Did they have Boots the Chemist up here?
No.
It's like a chain drugstore.
Okay.
Right, and it's an English thing, and there's one on Oxford Street. Now, Oxford Street is a very busy thing, but he used to live around the corner from there. So I see him in Boots the Chemist, and I said, wow, you go, you know, not wow, that's maybe what I've learned now. I said, goodness gracious me, one of the Beatles in Boots the Chemist, you know, this chain store, how do you think you get it? And he goes, well, look, it's kind of easy. He says, watch this, and he goes to the woman, and he goes, could I get some Colgate toothpaste, please? And she goes, oh, you're Paul McCartney, could I get your autograph? 2 Julie things here. And yeah, sure, thank you. Could I get some of that toothpaste? Some of that toothbrush, a blue, purple one. Yeah. And then we go out and he says, you see, it takes exactly the same time to be nice to people as it does to be an arsehole. You know, can't you see I'm eating? And I realised that if you'd have had 2 tall men with black coats like this, he would have drawn all his attention, but he was just sort of an insignificant shopper or another. But, wow, was that Paul McCartney? That's how it goes. So I've always run my game like that. I've always been a person, like, I get to the gig, I go for a walk. I've been around, all the way around Calgary. I've walked everywhere. You know, I just walk down from here. It's like half a mile to Starbucks. Walk down there, you know. That looked like the guy we're going to go and see tonight. No, it can't be him. Why would he be it? But you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I think that's the way it's got to be, really. It keeps you kind of level. Because none of the girls in Starbucks have ever heard of Herman's Hermits.
Well, maybe they'll be selling your CD. They seem to be selling CDs nowadays.
You know, I've only bought one record ever from there, and that was the Elvis Presley Boy from Tupelo.
Oh, yeah.
All the other stuff I haven't. What is this?
Did you ever meet Elvis?
Yeah,
Really?
I interviewed him like you did.
You interviewed Elvis?
Yeah, it's famous.
Really?
He never did interviews, but I liked him, and I got him to agree to do an interview.
For what? What were you working for?
For the BBC and KPOI, a radio station in Hawaii, where he was when I did the interview. You know, it's really stuff. When you come into England, you know, just real stupid. It was just a great opportunity, you know. I think we saw Tom Parker. I was friends with Tom Parker until he died. He was just a really interesting character. I said, I'd like to meet your client. And he goes, well, he doesn't meet people. I said, well, you know, I could, who are you? I said, well, I'm Herman from Herman's Hermits. And he goes, well, he didn't know that, you know. I said, where are you playing, you know? Oh, we're playing here in town. Where are you playing? I said, well, we're playing at the Hula Bowl. We're headlining. Oh, what time do you want to meet? You know, we'd sold 50,000 tickets to a concert. He piqued his interest.
Of course.
And it was just Elvis was a really nice guy, you know. It's a shame that he didn't do tons of interviews because he was a really funny, uppity. He did have 10 people with him who laughed at everything he said and didn't laugh at anything I said, although some of my stuff was funny. He laughed, but they didn't. They knew only to laugh at his stuff. It's kind of sad, you know, Well, no, I think they were kind of primed, you know. Tom told me that what they had was a 50-50 deal. But it was 50, he only got his 50% of the net. So Elvis would spend a load of money so that he only got He said, I wish I'd had 10% of the gross now. But I got 50% of the net, and there really wasn't a net, because they would buy people cars. And Elvis was very extravagant, so that Tom wouldn't get all the money. Funny stuff. It was a very, very interesting interview, because it was all my sister. I'd call my sister. I said, I'm gonna meet Elvis. What shall I ask him? And she said, ask him, does he dye his hair? Which is, so constantly all through the interview, I'm like looking at his hair instead of his face. You know what I mean? And it clearly was dyed. And the biggest shock was how handsome he was when he walked in. Shit, this is the most handsome guy I've ever seen. He looks just like in the movie, but he was made up for the movie. He was all fit. He was making Paradise Hawaiian style. He was all fit with the makeup and the hair, and he was like Elvis. Usually you meet John Lennon, he like one of the boys. Right. Elvis looked like Elvis.
Huh. Well, let's go to John Lennon then.
I had a strange relationship with John Lennon, because he was the one in the band who didn't have a girlfriend at the time. He'd fallen out with Cynthia or Cindy, whatever her name was, and he was kind of on the tiles. So I would, we'd do a television show in Birmingham, which is about 100 miles from London, and I was so cheeky that I would go to John Lennon and I would say, what are you doing after the show? What are you doing after the TV show? And he'd like to get rid of me. He says, oh, I'm going back to London. And I'd say, can I come with you? And then what would you? Yeah, all right. So we go to London, and I'd be there with no bags or anything. Yeah. In those days, nobody had credit cards. I had a checkbook, and people would cash checks. So, and then we got the ad lib, and you'd get in I remember we'd get into the elevator, the lift at the ad lib club, which was upstairs behind Leicester Square. And once we were in this elevator going up, and they played I'm In With the In Crowd. It's kind of funny. I'm standing there and I'm with one of the Beatles. And we go into the club, and I was only 16, and they wouldn't serve me a drink. So, we can't you can't have a drink. So John said, I'll have two Bacardis, and he'll have 2 Cokes. And then we switched the things, and they knew we were doing it, and it was kind of fun. The music was too loud, so there was not a lot of chatting, And I realized that he was more interested in the kind of girls that I could pick up than the girls, the 22-year-olds that he could pick up. So it was a kind of, and I knew his dad, Freddie. I got to meet his dad, Freddie, and go through all those discussions about. That was a huge breakdown. I had a great relationship with my dad, so I couldn't understand a lot of those. People didn't have good relationships with their dads. I did. Mick Jagger had a good relationship with his dad. So we did okay. Keith Richards had a good relationship with his dad. I think it's part of it kind of keeps it grounded. Dads. You forget until you don't have a dad anymore how proud they are of every single accomplishment that you make. No matter how big or small it is. It's just an accomplishment. They just want you to accomplish things.
Well, I'm going to let you go, but what are you up to? I know you're doing a big tour this summer. You're always on the road, aren't you?
Yeah, we're always on the road. It's part of what we do. It's like we do 100 concerts a year, and it suits our wives and our families that we've gone that 3 days a week. Most people are lucky enough to have their dad around every night. Yeah. I'm just around every day except when I'm working.
Right, it's just weekends, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah, but sometimes we go away for a long run. But it's 3 days a week. I'm home 3 days a week. 2 days, 3 days a week. It's not bad, is it?
No, not bad at all.
No, my daughter lives in Nashville, so when I go to Nashville, I do work there.
Yeah, nice.
It's good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was great.